Let's talk about bringing back the death penalty first, because of this awful story in all the papers today that really makes you question whether a prison sentence can ever be harsh enough for a man like this. Kyle Clifford, there he is, found guilty of raping his ex-partner Louise Hunt. That's the very latest development. He didn't appear in court. Jurors took just 45 minutes to make up their minds. He previously denied raping Louise, but admitted to fatally shooting her and her sister Hannah with a crossbow at the women's family home and stabbing their mother to death, there she is on the left, with a knife. It was the 9th of July last year when Clifford carried out the attack, something the trial heard he had been planning for some time. Clifford's relationship with Louise Hunt had ended a couple of weeks before. 6 days later, he bought the crossbow he went on to use to take Louise and Hannah's lives. On the day of the attack, Clifford deceived their mother, Carol, to gain access to the family home before grabbing the crossbow from his car and then lying in wait for Louise to return. He then took her captive for nearly 3 hours, raping her and killing her with the crossbow. When Louise's sister Hannah came home, Clifford shot her with the crossbow too. He will be sentenced on Tuesday. Louise was just 25. Loved ones described her as caring, positive, and happy. She owned a dog grooming business she ran from a pod in her garden. Hannah was a beautician. She was 28. Their mother, Carol, was the wife of the BBC racing commentator. There's Carol, the wife of John Hunt of the BBC, and Carol was 61. Hearing these crimes and picturing the sheer terror these women went through, does it make you reconsider the death penalty, Cristo?
Yes, it does. And actually, it's the last few months that I've reconsidered the death penalty. I never used to have a huge feeling either way on it. I wasn't particularly in favour of it, but I think crimes like this and the Southport killings as well, the man who I shall not name because I think we've heard his name enough, but those horrific victims of the Southport stabbings, what is the point in people like this being kept alive at our expense in order to have a life in prison? I think that with a few caveats, there should be a serious discussion about the death penalty returning for crimes of this nature. Certainly, I mean, this one I'm not so sure on. I think I would have the death penalty for this, most definitely for Southport when it comes to crimes of murdering children. I think that the families of victims should have a say about whether they would like the death penalty to be asked for. And I think that the resources and the money, the millions actually that are saved from keeping prisoners who will never see the light of day, they're going to be in prison for life. They're never going to make a positive contribution to society again. That the money saved for that should actually be put into resourcing those prisoners who have a chance of making a contribution to society when they leave. Let's actually educate them. Let's actually use that money to give those prisoners a chance.
I'm trying to, when it's a case like this, Faiza, I can't remember what the argument against the death penalty is. Because the argument, sometimes you execute the wrong people, doesn't work here. We know he did it. Are you against it?
I'm against the death penalty on moral grounds. I do want to say, though, that obviously this case is horrifying, and for Louise Hunt and the Hunt family and their friends, I mean, I can understand if they want the person that did this to pay for it with their lives. What I would say about the death penalty is also how it reflects on us as a people. I would say that when you get into territory of state-sanctioned murder, when we allow the state to kill, that puts us in a kind of slippery slope situation, but also I think is not what we want to stand for morally. I think life imprisonment and these very severe crimes it need to be punished, of course. But I think that murdering someone as a state, I just feel deeply uncomfortable about that.
It's not murder if it's a killing by the state, is it? Because if someone breaks into my house and is attacking me with a sword and I kill them,
we're
that's not murder.
taking someone's life. And in this case, yes, he did it. But like if you look at the US and cases there are cases where actually it's not clear. What if you make a mistake?
Of course. And
what if you get it wrong? So once you open this
Yeah.
up, this leaves us, and actually it will end up costing a lot of money to try these sorts of cases, because to make that kind of decision to take someone's life, that requires and that appeals and the rest of it. Right. Actually, you won't end up saving money.
Let me bring in our first caller, and I gather you've got a connection with the Hunt family, Bobby, in Hertfordshire.
Oh yeah, hello there. Yeah, well, how are you doing? Yeah.
Hi. Well, shattered by this case. I mean, I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I can't even. Yeah. I don't know John Hunt. I can't imagine what he's going through. I feel this man, the murderer, is the most despicable person.
It must have been the worst ever to find out, come home and find out that your family was murdered, all 3 of them all in one go. You know, it was the worst case that I've ever heard of in my life, and I'm still reeling from it. So, be like, do you know what I mean, Jeremy?
Yeah, I do. Do you know, I can't. There are so many bad cases. There's Fred West, and there's Huntley, and there's Levi Belfield, and so there's something about this case. I think it's the crossbow, it's the planning, it's killing it's because. And it's because he was dumped by his girlfriend that he decides, I'm not having that, and then kills the family?
Yeah, he killed the whole family, the mother, the beautiful mother, and the 2 lovely girls. And thanks be to God, the other girl wasn't there at present, or she mightn't be here today either. Yeah. You know?
So we're talking about the death penalty, Bobby. Are you somebody who thinks that this person should...
In this case, yes, absolutely, 100%. And right in front of you, it's terrible what this guy has done. Absolutely. And then he hadn't got the decency to turn up in court to face the music, you know, and the calculating way he's done it, and the way he's used one of the girls' phones to ask John, what time will you be at home, you know, and he was thinking that his daughter was texting him, you know, the calculated way he done it. So this guy should go. This guy should be, the death penalty should be brought back, you know.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I wonder whether we were told by the last government, this thing of people saying, I don't fancy hearing the verdict, turning up in court, is stopping. And the last government dropped the ball on it. Now here we are again with people saying, yeah, it's such an insult. Thanks, Bobby. Graham in Edinburgh, is this the argument for the death penalty?
Hi, Jeremy. No, I don't think so. If anything, I think there should maybe be a referendum to see if it should be brought back or not. I'm a former prison officer, and if you get to know prisoners deep down, some of them aren't bad people. Although they've done an absolutely terrible, terrible crime, if you put them to death, that means that it's final, and you're also punishing the families, and you know the family of the victims. They don't know. They now know that it's finished, and that the actual prisoner himself is still alive, and he's in prison.
Isn't the final nature, though, the whole point of it? I mean, I agree with you, by the way, that some prisoners are redeemable, that some prisoners might make really bad decisions, and that there should be probably more resources to make those prisoners have a good effect on society, a positive contribution. But someone like this person will never make a positive contribution to society, will never be redeemed enough to be able to be rehabilitated. So, Graham, surely that means that there is no other decision to be made.
Yeah, but you've also got to think about the staff that are dealing with that prisoner. Can you imagine if you're living and you've got to take a prisoner by the arm and lead him to his death? If you're a person that's going to press a button that's going to kill somebody, that'll live with you forever.
All right. Well, there will be quite a few people, I imagine, who would be willing to do that with this character. But you raise a good point, because you'd be in a situation where somebody would be on effectively death row. There'd be years of appeals. All of that drags it back up for the family. With this, the system will swallow him up. We'll hopefully never hear from him or see his face again. Yeah, he effectively disappears.
It isn't like the end of your life. In a way, for them to have to sit in prison and suffer and have to think about what they've done. I mean, it depends how you feel about the afterlife and what you think happens. But I just think that it's important for them to have to suffer in some way. And actually, for some of them, losing their life is not.
Well, he did. Of course, he tried to kill himself with the crossbow and missed.
He wants to die, so.
And he's ended up using a wheelchair for the rest of his life.
He has to live with it.
Well,
he will have a very, very bad time in prison.
That's
a very bad time in prison.
The family should decide. The victim's family should decide whether the death penalty is something they want to pursue. And you may be absolutely right. In this case, they may say, well, look, this guy's in a wheelchair. He will be suffering. We want to have him in prison and forget about it. But they may decide that actually they're prepared to go through the appeals. They're prepared to go through having him killed themselves.
OK, after the break, more calls on this. Is it time to at least think about bringing back the death penalty when we get a crime like the Clifford slaughter of that poor family? 0207 862 2222. By the way, he pleaded guilty because he was filmed with a crossbow, so he had to admit that he murdered the two daughters and the mother. He then incredibly said, but I didn't rape my ex-girlfriend, even though she was tied up with rope. So you then have to have a criminal trial with John and others in the gallery, family and friends having to watch on. And then he pleads not guilty. He doesn't even turn up for that. The jury take 45 minutes to decide he's guilty, which he obviously was. But it just puts them through more agony because the evidence they have to hear is so awful.
And he would have known that.
Of course he would. And why would he say, I did 3 murders, but I didn't, the rape is the one thing I didn't do, as if anyone is going to believe that. It's just, anyway, back to our main topic, which is whether this is one where you think, you know what, we do need the death penalty in this country. Patricia in Devon, do you think so?
Absolutely. It should never have been abolished.
Well, hang on a minute. Before it was abolished, we had some bad ones. We executed a guy called Timothy Evans for the murder of his wife and daughter, when actually it was the landlord who did it. And we executed Ruth Ellis, who was brutalised by her boyfriend, snapped and shot him, and she got hanged. So we had some very, very, very bad executions in the 40s and 50s.
Well, that's only two. When you think of all the people that have done hideous crimes and they're held up in prison, it's too easy. And we are too soft in this country. We have no law and order.
Do you think
boys of 15 are going out with knives, stabbing, whatever? And it's time this country took a long, hard look back on what is going on.
Do you think it will work? Patricia, hang on. Will it? Because you can't execute 15-year-old boys. Nobody wants that to happen.
No, I did not say that.
No, but therefore it wouldn't act as a deterrent in the example you gave. All I was going to say, not confronting you here, but just hear me out for a second, is in the States they've got all of this, right? They've got the electric chair. They even had a guy executed by firing squad 40 years ago called Gary Gilmore. And they've still got a shocking crime rate in the States, violent crime.
Well, that's the States. This is a small island, and it's time we had some law and order.
I hear you. OK, Patricia, thank you. Chris in Hampshire, would you bring it back?
Absolutely not. It doesn't work. The states prove it doesn't. And also, you've got to think about the person that would then have to kill this person. Somebody would then have the job of then putting them to death. That's the most awful thing to do. Now, in my mind, if you are sent to prison for a serious crime and you go to prison for the whole of your life, that's far worse, because you've got to wake up every morning for the rest of your life and think about what you did. And that way you're not...
And the Southport killer... Yeah, hang on, Cristo, that's a good point. The Southport killer will have to do that, won't he? To living with it is harder than dying with it.
Well, if there's no remorse whatsoever and there is no idea of the gravity of what they have done, if there's a pleasure in what they did, as there was in the case of the Southport killer, I'm not sure that would be the worst thing that they could go through. And secondly, I understand that it would be horrific for the person who had to implement this, but I think that you would have specially trained officers that would do that. And I would hope, someone like Axel Rudakabana, I'm sorry, I said his name and I hate saying his name, but I would pull that lever. I would. In that case, you would. How could you not think about those heinous crimes not do it?
I think we would, as I say, we would have no shortage of people who would be prepared to do it. James in Cornwall, you changed your mind on this.
Yeah, as I say, Jeremy, I'd be appalled listening to myself had I called you 50 years ago. But I think people believe that life has become so cheap that it really doesn't matter. If I take a knife out and I stab someone, I'm only going to be away for 15 years, so I've got the rest of my life in front of me.
What about that?
I don't think that's how people think. I agree we need to take a long, hard look at what's going on in society. And I think, even when you read this story, which is horrific, and you look at the way in which this person was radicalised, it seems, through, he couldn't take the rejection, and he watches these Andrew Tate videos.
Yeah, that's an important thing to mention, actually, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, like the level of misogyny and this, and we see it across society. I mean, people don't take these extreme measures, but we do see this link to influencers like Andrew Tate, who really actually hate women.
Well, so just on this, Clifford searched for Andrew Tate's podcast 24 hours before the murder. We've done a bit on it. Maybe people who are not clear on who Tate is, but he makes a living basically being a misogynist, and he's quite open about that, and he advocates violence against women. He's bouncing back and forth between Romania and the USA. It's unbelievable he has this influence. So there's a whole other thing there of why he's on these platforms. But in the end, it's something about Kyle Clifford that made him feel he'd been slighted and he was going to take 3 lives. In response, you could argue that's so crazy, he can't be sane.
Well, I mean, I don't know in particular with his mental health, but I think there are issues when you look at particular cases, and this is what you do, right? You don't open it up for just one person, you've just then opened it up. And yes, there may be issues where it's, where do you draw the line between mental health and, are we going to end up killing people that are just deeply unwell? Of course, what I want us to really focus on is preventing these things from happening in the first place.
Of course, but
and it's absolutely true that
yeah.
the death penalty doesn't deter people when you look at violent crime levels in places like the US. Yes, it's another country, but it's still an example.
Yeah.
And so,
I don't know. My biggest worry is that you would, straight after the conviction of Lucy Letby, she would definitely have been sent to the gallows.
Story is now.
And now a lot of people are wondering whether she killed anybody.
I don't think she'd have been sent to the gallows immediately. There would have been a process. There would have been an appeal process. People aren't sent to the death penalty immediately, firstly. Secondly, I think that America is a different kettle of fish, especially with their gun culture. But thirdly, the death penalty from years ago where we made mistakes, that was way before DNA evidence. That was way before different processes that we have nowadays in order to stop those miscarriages.
But wait a minute, one of those examples was a woman who had been under severe abuse and she killed her partner. And what happened, my understanding of the public debate at the time, is that people were like, obviously it was wrong, but they kind of understood how that happened and they felt like the death penalty was too hard. So it wasn't that they didn't know she did it. She had done it. It was
the mitigations weren't. Hang on, let's just get another call. Johnny in Kent, hello.
Hello, Liz.
Where are you today on the death penalty?
I agree with the gentleman on your panel there,
Cristo.
It's unbelievable, really. I mean, when you think those two beautiful little girls that were killed by Huntley, I mean, for the death penalty for child murderers should be brought back.
Yeah, I was a story yesterday. There's a guy called Sidney Cook. He's not on my radar. He's 90-something. He's in jail. The Mail Online said he was implicated in the murders of 20 children. He was in the news yesterday because he was beaten up by another prisoner using a thermos flask. You think, have we really been supporting him for 30, 40 years in jail? Maybe 50 years, I don't know. So, extraordinary. Johnny, thank you. So much to say on this.